I always kind of chuckle to myself a little bit when people ask me, what does the airplane cost? Because the actual initial capital expenditure is only a small portion of what it actually costs to run an operating airplane, just like a car, just like, almost any vehicle that's mechanical and breaks down and requires fuel and maintenance and whatnot. So, interestingly enough, the best parallel I could think of is actually software. And for some reason, the last 6 to 9 months has seen a whole ton of small and mid-sized businesses calling us, asking about how to deal with their old legacy system that they spent a bunch of money on, and now they realize they can see that it's basically timed out, and they need to join the modern world and invest in SaaS products, move everything into the cloud, or even if they're already in the cloud, sort of ditch the old software development methodology and start integrating and using a lot more third-party services. Because out there in the world, there's tons of stuff that's already developed that's a lot better than you're going to develop custom in-house for most of the functions you're going to use it for. And I say that as a custom developer, right? So I get these phone calls, and they want to know, the first thing they want to know is, am I going to have to spend $500,000, $1 million, $2 million all over again? And then is that going to get timed out? And the answer is obviously a little bit complicated, but I've got two pieces of news, good news and bad news. So the good news is that a large amount of the work that's done in modern software development is actually integrating and finding the right systems and throwing the switches to configure those systems, that sort of thing, because so much is available out there in the universe now that you don't have to custom develop all of your own stuff anymore, and you all know that. But the downside to that is that you're going to be paying those maintenance and fuel costs, if you will, forever, because you can't just put down a chunk of money and own a piece of software anymore. You're going to integrate with someone else's services, you're going to lease someone else's SaaS product, etc., and you'll also probably own some of your own custom IP as well. And so that's good and bad news, but ultimately I really believe it's good news. And the reason why is because you don't have to be deep down in code all the time, or have a team that's deep down in code all the time, constantly doing upgrades and changes to little bits and pieces, because most of your third-party services and vendors are doing that for you. So when the tax laws change and you have to change how the shipping algorithm works based on zip codes and whatnot, there are companies that have those services already. And also, the world of technology, software development, commerce, whatever, has gotten a lot more complex in the last few years, so you really need that anyway. Because if you were to custom develop it yourself, it would cost 2, 3, 4 times more to develop and maintain than it did 10 or 15 years ago when things were a lot simpler. So I really believe on the whole it's good news. So what do you do now? The first thing is, don't freak out about losing all of your old code base. If someone comes along and says, you know what, we're going to have to throw out all your code, first of all, that may or may not be true. But even if it's true, you have a huge amount of value in that old system. That's the business processes, the logic you've developed over the years, the knowledge of what worked well and what didn't work well that you're going to apply to the new system when you develop it. So don't lose hope. Remember, the code is cheaper and easier to develop today than it was years ago, but the business logic and the rules and things like that are just as hard, if not harder, because you're in a more complex world. So the good news is if you focus on that stuff, spend your time and money figuring out what systems to purchase, who should do the integration, what the 80-20 rule is, so you do the 20% of the features that give you the 80% of the value. And the last piece of advice I have on selecting and integrating new systems in the modern world is, don't go shopping without a shopping list when you're hungry. I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit in another Planecast. But when you walk into the grocery store of software systems and you're hungry, the tendency is to buy the first one with a demo that looks good. And once you get that SaaS product going and you dump all your data in and do all the integrations, it's super hard to just exit and leave, right? So my advice is take your time up front so you don't have to redo everything later. There's never time to do it right, but there's always time to do it over. You don't want to be that person. And I'd love to hear any of your stories on what's gone well, what hasn't gone well. Other software developers or custom integrators, love to see your comments as well. And of course, as always, I'll comment back and try to help anyone that's looking for advice to get them going in the right direction.